Okay, I want you to listen to this because it's one of the most unbelievable survival stories you will ever hear. It's a story about luck, yeah, but it's also about knowledge and a will to live that is just staggering. And it all kicks off on a day that should have been a celebration.
Imagine this. It's Christmas Day, December 25th, 1971. But for one young woman, there are no presents, no family. Just the cold, damp, disorienting feeling of the jungle floor. Her name is Juliane Koepcke. She's just 17, and she's just now coming to, after being unconscious for almost a full day. She's hurt, she's confused, and she is absolutely, completely alone, right in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, hundreds of miles from anywhere. So, you've got to be asking yourself, right? How on earth does a 17-year-old girl end up here, on the floor of the Amazon, on Christmas morning? Well, the answer starts 24 hours earlier, up in the sky. All right, so to really get how she ended up there, we have to rewind the clock by 24 hours, back to a flight that started with holiday cheer and ended in total disaster. So, Lanza Flight 508, it was a Christmas Eve flight. You can just picture it, right? The first half hour, everything's totally normal. People are happy, excited to get home for the holidays. But then, as the plane starts its descent, the pilots make just a catastrophic decision. They fly straight into a massive, dark thunderstorm. For the next 20 minutes, it is pure terror inside that cabin. I mean, luggage flying everywhere. And then, at 21,000 feet, bam, a lightning bolt hits the wing. And the plane just starts to come apart in midair. And this is where Juliane's memory kicks in. In her own words, she said, "The roar of the wind was deafening. Then I was outside the plane, still strapped to my seat, falling." Can you even imagine that? One moment, you're in a plane. The next, you're just outside, still strapped to your seat, falling 2 miles toward the jungle below. The screams, the engine noise, all gone. Just the sound of wind rushing past. Now look, a 10,000-foot fall, that should be it. Game over. There's no way you survive that. But in Juliane's case, a series of just incredible, almost unbelievable physical events happened that saved her life. This is where the story gets absolutely wild. It wasn't just one thing. It was this perfect storm of improbable physics. First, the thunderstorm itself. The violent updrafts inside it actually acted like a parachute, slowing her down. Then, get this, the row of seats she was strapped to started spinning like a maple seed. You know that little helicopter effect? It created aerodynamic lift. And then finally, the dense Amazon canopy acted like a giant, tangled green safety net, cushioning that final brutal impact. So surviving the fall, that was miracle number one. But waking up on the jungle floor on Christmas Day, well, that was the start of a whole new ordeal. And you could argue it was even tougher. So when she finally, somehow, gets to her feet, the reality of her situation just crashes down on her. A broken collarbone, a severely sprained knee. She has these deep gashes all over her body, a serious concussion, and to make everything worse, her glasses are gone, so she's practically blind. Oh, and she only has one shoe. I mean, her fight for survival is starting from an absolutely brutal place. But here's the thing. Juliane wasn't an ordinary teenager, and this might be the single most important factor in why she's alive. Her parents, they were famous zoologists. She had literally spent years of her childhood living with them at a research station deep inside this very jungle. So this terrifying environment, a place that would kill almost anyone else, it was, in a very strange way, familiar to her. And through all that pain, all that confusion, she remembered one crucial piece of advice her father had given her. It was a simple rule, but it became her lifeline, her entire survival strategy. Find water and follow it. And just like that, with nothing but that one piece of advice and this incredible will to live, she begins an 11-day trek through hell. So for 4 straight days, she pushes on. Her injuries are just screaming at her, but she keeps going. And then, on that 4th day, the sheer horror of what happened becomes devastatingly real. She stumbles across another piece of the wreckage, a row of seats. 3 other passengers are still strapped in, but they've hit the ground with so much force that they're buried head first. I mean, just imagine seeing that. She was frozen with fear, terrified that one of them was her mother, who was also on the flight. It wasn't her mom, but that image, That was a brutal, brutal reminder of what she had somehow survived.
Now for food. For almost 2 weeks, her only food was a small bag of candy she found. That's it. And all around her, the jungle is just teeming with dangers. We're talking poisonous snakes, giant spiders, alligators in the same water she's wading through. The odds were just astronomically against her.
So for days and days, she just walked. She waded through streams, sometimes she even had to swim, always following the water. She's getting weaker, she's starving, her wounds are getting seriously infected. But right when she's about to lose all hope, the jungle gives her a sign.
On the 10th day, she sees it, a small boat, the first sign of another human being in over a week. She finds a little path and, using every last bit of her strength, follows it to a small, empty hut. And inside, another one of her dad's lessons pops into her head. She finds a can of gasoline and pours it on this awful wound in her arm. It was incredibly painful, but it worked. It forced out dozens of maggots that had been eating her alive. She spends the night there, and the next day, the loggers who used the hut came back.
You know, you'd think they'd be overjoyed, but at first, they were just terrified. I mean, here's this girl, covered in mud and blood, one eye swollen completely shut. They thought she was a water spirit from their local folklore, something called the Yaku Mama. They literally couldn't believe she was a real person, let alone that girl from the plane crash they'd been hearing about on the radio.
Her rescue, of course, becomes a massive global story. But for Juliane, it was far from over. She had to deal with her own trauma, and she was about to learn something about the crash that would haunt her for the rest of her life.
The whole world celebrated her as the one, the only survivor of Flight 508, the miracle girl who fell from the sky and lived. But that wasn't exactly the whole story. And this, to me, is the most heartbreaking part of this entire story. Investigators eventually figured out that as many as 14 other people, including Juliane's own mother, had actually survived the fall. They were alive, but injured, and they died out there in the jungle, just waiting to be rescued, a rescue that never found them. See, Juliane didn't just survive the fall. She survived the jungle. Because she didn't wait. She used what she knew, and she moved. Juliane's story is just such an incredible testament to the power of knowledge and pure resilience. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? When you're faced with the impossible, when everything falls apart, what knowledge do you have tucked away that might just be the thing that saves your life?